right, Stu. I'm excited for our next episode, but as is in tradition, we can't start until there we go. We got our liquid death in.
The
Dude.
the fans are just going to think we're a bunch of drunks. Like, that's the reality.
Yes, they
Especially those that don't know liquid death. It's water, folks. It is it's water. But that click does sound like a road trip old familiar. That's all I'll say.
I still think if even we told them it was sparkling water, they'd be like, yeah, there's still a bunch of drunks on the microphone.
They are a bunch of drunks, but not today. Not right
Not
now.
today. Not at this particular moment.
Correct.
So, Stu, as we're getting ready for the show today, I was looking at some of like the projects. Everyone's got like these really cool like AI projects they're spinning off their day job. I don't know how everyone's doing it. They have like their day job, their side hustle, and then like their AI projects.
Yep.
But Gotti has got one here called the Darwin Awards, the AI Darwin Awards. So let me open this by saying, did you go to Taco Bell this week?
I didn't. I wasn't that drunk this week. So maybe that's a line. But no, I didn't go to Taco Bell. Why? Tell me more.
So you know how all these food companies are basically owned by the Yum brands, like they're all the same.
Yes.
Thing. Well, a lot of them have been rolling out at the same time using the same similar technology. They're rolling out these new AI powered drive-throughs because somehow the idea is if only we can have AI do the ordering, collection, processing thing, we're going to save all of this money. So anyway,
yes.
Taco Bell and a few others had to roll it all back because turns out testing in production is not a great idea at the drive-through line. And so it's basically been covered everywhere around this, but it's just absolute chaos. There's 500 drive-through locations that had these AI drive-throughs, and they were just a complete bomb. And people were, because humans are humans, and the humans in the drive-through are both creative and whatever, they're just going to like push it. So somebody was ordering like 1,200 cups of water. You had someone else who was asking to like hold the cilantro on something that didn't have cilantro and basically broke the system. So it's a really good use case in why you need to test and red team your systems before they go into production.
We got to red team a bunch of humans because it's really like, by theory, this whole technology works until you have idiots. And I don't know, it sounds like something I would do. So I can't get too mad. Like a teenage Stuart Mitchell going through a drive-through, like, for sure would be off, like pulling these kinds of pranks. And whilst harmless, like I've no doubt that there's ramifications and probably cost Yum fair chunk of change.
I bet you did. When I was in high school, I specifically did this. I didn't do like a lot of like fun air quotes things in high school. You know, anyone knows me knows I'm pretty not fun. But one day I was goofing off with my friend. I went through a Taco Bell and I ordered a bean burrito with a single bean. And we basically just broke the guy's brain. But that's my one experience. And that was well before we had any AI.
That's AI. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm sure it's funny that probably lower intelligence probably figured out that you were being somewhat of a child.
Being a pain in the ass, yes.
Being a pain in the ass. There is room for sarcasm, and maybe that's one for AGI to figure out.
100%. So we had 500 Taco Bells. We had 27,000 McDonald's locations worldwide, and like 100 of them were with this AI pilot. And now it's just a whole thing. So anyone should go check that out. And of course, there's also the Darwin Award page where Gotti's like keeping this all together, and you can go through and if you have great moments like that, you can just submit them. So I thought that was
nice.
All right, so let's get into one on the more serious note here. So we've got AI adoption reshaping not just the markets, but we're talking about the entire economies. I want to get into some of the new information from Anthropic. We're definitely creating some winners and losers here. I want to get your point on that. Inside, we've got ransomware. This is new this week. Ransomware that's negotiating with the defenders in real time because of some embedded LLMs. So yeah, I think we're in for a pretty good conversation today. So maybe we just start with the Anthropic data because I think that one would really start to lay out the shifting landscape around where we're going and the future for work here.
Yeah, and I do think it is a great point, and feel free to dive into it a little bit deeper. But like the long and the short of it is we already live in a world and an economy where some folks are further advanced due to their access to technology and literacy and are just further forward in the world, right? Like that's where we're at. From what I understand of the Anthropic study, this is going to accelerate this tenfold, and feel free to go into a little bit more detail and data of it, but the long and the short of it is AI productivity is just clustering in wealthy, high adoption regions. And again, whilst we've seen that before AI, it's not surprising. The acceleration here is getting a little scary.
Totally. So let's talk about this for a second. The Anthropic dropped their economic index. And for those who are watching it, you can see on the screen there, we'll make sure links from the show notes and all that jazz. But basically what they were highlighting here, and they've got a really great page that's interactive. Here's what the Anthropic economic index is starting to highlight. AI productivity gains are clustering in wealthy, high adoption regions instead of this larger global, and this is a break from the global convergence we've been having for the last 15 years. So broadly, technology has been a little bit, has started to give this idea that it becomes this great equalizer. But what we're seeing now, according to this data, is you're starting to see a separation between the AI have and the AI have nots. And I think this is really important, especially for large multinational organizations where there may be a tone being set in the US, but that tone may not be carried through to another country or another region. So not only are we going to see, my opinion, Connor's perspective, not only are we going to start seeing a world where the AI have and have nots start to have implications across a political spectrum, and you can see policy choices coming out across the countries because the impacts on their economy, but you'll also start to see a separation and a breakdown within organizations unless the leadership team takes note and starts making sure there's some homogeneity between the different business units in different regions.
Yeah, and that's going to be dangerous only because, like, let's say you are a huge global corporation, and this was my next question, so I'm glad that we got there. Is like state by state, right? Like, who is getting further ahead, and also like I do think we're going to see individual legislations based on states. And so people are going to get different levels of access, not because a business has allowed them to, or because they work for company X instead of company Y, but also global legislation is only going to allow certain layers of access and certain usage.
Mm.
And again, whilst this can create a world of haves and have-nots, and it's easy to talk about it on a US versus, Sierra Leone as an example of like,
Yeah.
obviously we have this huge technology infrastructure versus potentially somewhere in Central Africa. But to see this in data in, how much further like people are using it from a user perspective in DC, like it's kind of the usual spaces of DC, New York, California, but how that might be different to say in Mississippi or in Alabama.
100%. And I think this is going to be something to watch out for because we can't assume that when we read the next headline in the AI breakthrough or the productivity work through or the expectations being set on the future of work or the future of how business is going to happen, we just can't expect that to be evenly distributed, right? What's that great quote? The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I think this data points that out beautifully. And adoption is real. And I think when we had Daniel Miesler, we did our recording with him at Black Hat. He highlighted this too. He was using different language, but he was saying these are going to be these friction points when it comes to AI adoption, and that friction in the system is going to get us in a world where things are starting to skew, and that lopsidedness is going to become more lopsided, and that
Yes.
lopsidedness is going to accelerate, and it could be exacerbating. I don't think it's a far reach to say that lopsidedness would exacerbate problems that are already present, because as you start to have more, the rate of change is happening, the difference is starting to become more measurable, people can feel it, that's going to create that angst, and you're going to have humans reacting to that. So I think that's something to watch out for as well as like both interstate and then internationally.
Yeah, and again, I think it's right now we're probably sat on the side of the haves versus the have-nots, at least today. What that means for us in the long run, who knows? But I wonder if there's some folks in a different country doing a podcast right now who are, you know, lamenting that they don't have access to AI systems and talking about like being on the side of the have-nots and how to potentially navigate that. Because that's right now, it kind of seems like all gas, no brakes in the evolution of AI. I think we'll get maybe a few seatbelts. I don't know if we'll get brakes, but I think we're getting some seatbelts now.
I'm in the business of seatbelts and airbags,
Yeah,
not brakes. So
yeah,
yeah, let's
yeah.
go.
So, but it's easier for us to be having these conversations on this side. And I think we have to look at, okay, we, A, don't waste this opportunity. if this is the golden opportunity of a lifetime, which is played out a million different types of ways, but there's a fair percentage that we are in the start of an evolutionary period that is very interesting that we may be able to capitalize from. If this is an opportunity, don't waste it, because there are people in the world who may be sat on the have not side, whether it's lack of access to technology, lack of fundamental understanding, or like, legislation means that they can't get it. So take advantage of what you have. Don't wait till it's too late.
100% agreed. And I've got one final point on this area here, which is if we think about this and we bring it right back into the micro, and I look
Yeah.
at like micro being the company level, when the MIT report came out and the headline was 95% of AI pilots are failing. Great. That was a lovely little clickbait kind of headline. When you read the report and you get into it, what you find is that actually there was a misapplication of where the time and attention was going. So where companies who were saying, we want to get the most benefit of AI where they were focusing on the back office. So it was repeat things that were repeatable, but there was those human
Yes.
that were driving it versus where the money was more money for most people was going was on the sales and revenue side, where actually right now it's very much relational. It's the person who
Yes.
you know and all that stuff. So if you are a leader at a company, I would say look at the back office. Where are those moments happening? How do you start doing that work and do the hard work of change management of getting the technology through? And
Yes.
then the biggest point of friction is not going to be technological. It's going to be how is the culture of that company handling the change to how work is getting done. So, as a leader, your job is to go, where does it make the most sense for the technology change? And then front and center, be thinking along the lines of how do we help the people in this go through what they need to go through to get reskilled and using these new agentic processes. I think that's the kind of my macro version of this, because if you scale, it's that same thing. If you scale it all the way out, you're going to have regions that are misapplying it or regions where the friction is too high. And you can do the same thing inside your company. You can find the business unit where it was being misapplied or the business unit where the friction was too high.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And again, I think it's it's there's a couple of arguments here of like going back, remote work doesn't seem super popular right now, but allowing remote work and allowing your team to live and work in a state where you have access is going to be interesting and it's going to be important. But I think to your point, the appropriation of using the tooling right now is very much, I think people have tried to use AI tooling for everything. I think right now the obvious wins are in non-public facing, non-people facing objectives. Again, we are assuming it almost from like if there's an AI first world, we're living in it right now. Like this,
yep.
going back to the Anthropic, there's an AI third world, right? Which is probably not dissimilar, but I'm sure there's some first world countries who have third world access to AI. And I hate using that terminology. It's a little degrading, and there's a better terminology for it. But you know what I mean, right? There is more economically less developed countries maybe have AI access, and I'm sure there's some incredibly economically developed companies that maybe don't have, because of legislation, have access to this. So we are assuming it from a place of full access, which is, it's an interesting thought exercise to think that there's people in your team who, when you log on to ChatGPT, it says, hey, no, like you might, if you're in a globally distributed organization, that you're just going to get no entrance.
Yeah, that was so on the heels of this, there's been some news this week around the future of work. And Stu, I
Right.
wanted to get your take on this because I'm not sure where I land on this and you're way close to the metal on this. So why don't you go into this? Like the Zoom CEO,
Yeah.
Eric Yuan, made some comments today. I'll leave it over to you.
Yeah. So, the Zoom CEO, who for what it's worth, I think is at least reputationally a like fairly decent human being, right? Like I think he treats his company and has historically treated his company pretty well. Talked about this evolution of what the world maybe should look like with AI technologies, which, the whole point is, hey, maybe we need to work less. And so they talked about, and this was echoed by a couple of other fairly well-known CEOs, is that the future might look like a 3-day work week. And whilst in practice sounds like it might make sense, we live in a land of, and so this is where we can talk about like the different geographies, because in Sweden or in Italy or I don't know, like France, sure, I could see it, right? Like people aren't so focused on quarterly earnings or their stock price or, their own portfolios. Like again, like it is more of a case of, hey, people work to live. Again, I'm generalizing, but work to live. That is not necessarily the case in the United States. And I think in a world of, I don't know, like we judge things on quarters. America would never allow a world of like not full speed. And then like again, like I'm a little tired of this narrative, and we talk about this quite a bit on the show, which is why the obsession over we can do the same by working less or with less people, and why are we not in this context of what could we achieve if we kept our same people and same workforce and same timeframes with the same technology? Like I don't get this, and you we talked about this earlier, which is rather than trying to save $1 billion, why don't we try and make 10 more with our current workforce? And it does feel a little bit like, okay, let's use this to strip out the P&L, which, don't get me wrong, Wall Street laps up. But do you know what else Wall Street laps up?
Right.
400x in sales, 200x in productivity. And so this whole idea of like, hey, we can keep living in the world. If there's a country in the world that will be the last country on the planet to adopt a 3-day work week, it would be the United States. You look at what is happening in San Francisco right now, and for the kids out there, the phenomenon of the 996, right, which is 12-hour work days, 6 days a week. Look, this was actually like I thought about this. It was actually my life in my 20s, and like that's okay. I didn't have a family. I didn't have a girlfriend. Like it was, and I was building a foundation of my career. Do I think it's sustainable long term? No. I'm actually quite romantic about being in a startup with a bunch of people and getting together and sprinting and being so passionate about the work that you feel okay doing a 70-hour week. I'm actually like I'm kind of okay with it. Like I don't think it should be mandated or a thing, but like good for you for taking a run. But I just don't. I might be sinister. I might be old. I might be tired. But like I don't know if you feel the same way. But if it like would be the last country on the planet to roll out a 3-day work week.
Totally. So again, when I read that the CEO of Zoom stepping forward and saying AI is going to be so effective across all these enterprises that maybe the future that we get is a 3-day work week. All right, going to hold that thought for a second. We've seen Jensen Huang say something similar about this from NVIDIA. He said, okay, maybe AI is going to be so good that we can get all of the gains that we want and we're at a 4-day work week. And there is this sense of, this reminds me very much of where like in the 1940s and 50s, they were talking about technology. It was exactly the same. They were wondering, like those was that classic like thing they brought to Congress. And they said, what are we going to do with all these people that have free time? It's like, it just never came to fruition. And so I think this is a moment where we do need to think about two components around this. Number one, are we the culture that wants to say our job is to increase the quality of the lived experience of its citizens? Is that the DNA of America? I've been in this country for a while. I don't know how long I've been here, 20 years, 15 years. And the answer is I've never seen that be the primary driver of American culture, right?
No.
We've always been the primary culture of like, can we grow more? Can we do more? Can we achieve more?
Maximize shareholder value.
There you go. Yes, thank you, Gordon Gekko. So the other one I would say is, okay, so you got that. So there is this dark side to it too. Well, what if he's right? What if we do maximize shareholder value and then the result is we all have 3-day work weeks? What are we all, like part-time contractors? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what
Do you need 2 jobs? Like, what does the compensation package look like? Like, I don't know.
Exactly. So I would just offer up the like, when we hear that idea of like, oh, maybe get a 3-day work week, I wouldn't be the first one to raise my hand and say that's a good idea. I would hold off and say, maybe the different way to do this because the social implications of that could be really meaningfully negative. On the other end, I go to this thing, and this is a fundamental paradigm lock-in that we've gotten since the AI boom came out. And we've said, I want people to do more with less. And all of Wall Street has said, we're going to reward those who reduce costs. And this goes directly to your points, Stu. I think we need to reshift this, or as leaders in enterprises, we need to turn around and shift the entire conversation and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. We are 10xing the capabilities of every employee. Let's go. And we're going to focus on growing, and because that would be in alignment with our American culture. Let's grow, let's go, let's get more sales. Let's get the team that we have today getting really good. Because what we're seeing, and so in that moment, if we said we are going to be focused on growth, it would actually open up the doorway for this quiet problem to remediate this quiet problem that's emerging, which is the unemployment rate between the youth for the youth in America. And
Yeah.
so while everyone talks about it as being 4% unemployment rate across America, if you double in to the 16 to 24-year-old cohort, they're at a 12% unemployment rate. They're over 3 times the amount unemployed. And that's going to be a material problem because you now have this workforce who doesn't have an on-ramp.
Yeah.
We don't have to have that be our society. We could be all in and grow. We could find on-ramps for people, and we could still be getting the other side of this. And that, I think that shift is really moving us away from being exclusively cost reduction to more growth enablement.
And look, the what like it in my industry, it's really simple, right? And there's a metric. There's two metrics we talk about, which is revenue and profit per head, right? So if I had, let's say, like just for arbitrary sake, like say I did 10,000 revenue per head and $2,000 profit per head, would I be better? Obviously, I'd want to increase that, and with AI, it seems like I can increase that. But what if I gave that? So let's say I did 20,000, which was $4,000 profit a head. I still want more people doing that. So let's say I've supercharged these people with AI. Now, if I have 500 people, as long as you can maintain that profitability, why would you not do more? So let's say AI is turbocharging the work of the sales team or the
Mhm.
marketing function, right? So let's say that the mentality of in for whatever reason in SaaS sales, 1 million has always been the quota. It just always has been, it always will be. Why can't that be 2 million, right? Like, why can't we, versus cutting to make sure that that million is more profitable, why can't we make the business better, the product better, the sales, marketing, everything better, so that these guys are now doing 2 million? Like, it just, we have to, this gets in my head sometimes. We are using today's technology, but operating it in a way that is fit for yesterday's business.
Yeah.
And that's where we're just not, the integrations haven't happened yet, which is, hey, let's fix all of our today problems with this revolutionary technology that should be able to make everything way better, but we just want to keep doing it the same way or focus on the same goals or whatever, when really we should be ridiculously resetting goals, going, okay, how do I use this to make my guys do 5 million or 10
Yes.
million? Like, how is that not a thing versus how do I make that million more profitable? Like, it's just, I don't know. I think we're
Well,
looking at it all wrong, personally.
I'm going to take it from a CISO perspective here. So from CISO's perspective, what I want is I want every single person on my team getting to the work they could never get to historically, right? So for me, that the way that story plays in a security context is, instead of saying, can we like reduce the headcount of my security org, I'm like, hold on, can we reduce the liability? Can we make
Yep.
us more resilient? Can we get to all of that architectural debt? Can we get
Yeah.
to all of those points of friction that we had in the business that we could never get to historically, and we just kind of have to suffer through, and that held the
Yeah.
business back?
And
And
can we
like
not
now, as a
turn the
CISO, you
security
can
team
step in.
over every 2 years because they're burnt out and sick of everything and just can't get ahead, right? Like,
Exactly.
most security people can't get ahead, and so they get burnt out. They think that it's going to be any different anywhere else, and then 18 months later, 2 years later, get burnt out again, and turn it over. So, like, is there a world where they can do and think and create and get to compliance faster and do some of the passion work that it seems like only exists at Google, where they spend 20% of their life doing creative and fixing tomorrow's problem and 80% fixing today's problem, versus, hey, I'm behind on my documentation. Again, I'm going to be heads down. I'll talk to you next Tuesday, of which maybe I'll be able to do my architectural reviews.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
there's a real world here where we can rethink, we can bring today's technology to solve today's problems, for, to your point,
yeah.
not
And look, let's go. It's a good segue, right? Because let's talk about today's companies joining, the yesteryear giants of cybersecurity. We've seen a little bit of a shopping spree where these brand new, almost it feels like 5-minute old companies have been bought by some of the older names.
Yep. So let's jump in there. So today, CrowdStrike just announced that they plan to acquire Pangea. I've got some friends over there, so we'll talk about that. Check Point is buying Lakera, and they guys are the most recent moves in this area. Recently, a few weeks ago, around Black Hat, we saw Sentinel One. They went and bought Prompt Security. Again, more friends over there. And what we're seeing is, for me, these are signs of really starting to see traditional security vendors really be clear that they want to be leading in this AI native. They want AI native capabilities in both their platforms, and they want to be the platform that secures the AI workloads that are coming into these organizations. So I think this is really interesting as a moment here. We're going to talk a little bit about like platformization, good, bad, or ugly, and all that means. But Stu, did you have any initial reactions when you start to see the M&A activity happening here, where you have like the titans of the cybersecurity space coming and picking up these companies that clearly, actually, to be honest, haven't found product market fit yet, but
Yeah.
they've got good talent, good tech, and a decent direction?
I have a couple of thoughts. Everyone's pulling for David, right? So it's not like there is part of us that's like, oh, great. Like, we're hoping that you would be the, and a lot of people are either like semi category creating right now, or they're coming up with novel stuff. So it is like, wow, maybe these folks might be the new CrowdStrike, Okta, like whatever it may be. And it just is like, oh, like, and I get it. Money is great, and it takes a long way to run a business to get to IPO and build to the billions. And if
Mhm.
you can get off pretty quick, like lots can go wrong in a short period of time. So I don't by no means blame the investors, the executive teams. I know these quick buyouts aren't necessarily great for anyone who's been there for less than 4 years, as someone who does a lot of reviewing of contracts. Whilst this will have made a lot of people very happy, won't have worked out for everyone. So like I always feel types of way about that. Um and look, I also think like, what does this say about the Giants in terms of like, is it even worth it for them to innovate anymore? Like they have such big checkbooks that if you're a huge organization that's like, all right, well, we see that this is going to be a space. Do we need to nurture and create and build the best in the world talent? Or do we just wait till someone's 60% of the way there and buy them up? And the same way in sports, right? There's different ways. You have the farm systems, the draft or whatever, or you can just pay for it. Uh, but there's always a purist view of like, hey, it would be cool to see like something come from the lab versus we bought another one. I don't know. That's a old romantic view of like how I think things should be run. As someone who has I hire extremely experienced talent from other teams, a little hypocritical, but I don't know. Are we is it worth it to be innovative at a big company anymore? And are they driving the right type of talent there?
Mhm.
That's the one thing from a purist mindset that it's like hard to get an answer to versus like, the big companies that can just buy out all the best.
So I'll need to go fact check this, but I've seen the headline that Palo Alto is sitting on 2.9 billion in cash and short-term investments.
Yeah.
So when you've got that much dry powder, like you've got to put it to work. So, I think this M&A, it's a natural accelerant for M&A.
Yeah. And then let's go back to kind of platformization as well, right? Because like in a world, like there's a world where and obviously you had the CISO at Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan that came out and said, like, single vendor is easier. But the long and the short of it is, there a world where we end up with like 4 security companies and you just plug and play a version of their collective suite versus, and is that a bad thing, right? Like we have so much choice right now, almost like over choice in a lot of categories, and weird integrations that don't always play well together. Like, is there a world where maybe there's like 3 in each category and they're all owned by Palo Alto,
Well, that's
CrowdStrike,
a great
etc.?
segue. That's a great one. Let me tell you something that this is when we brought this up on the docket, there was one person's perspective I wanted to share, and that is Ross Halleck's perspective. So I'm going to walk the audience through something here, because I think it's really important here. So first and foremost, I would say this: security doesn't consolidate all at once. It consolidates forever while there are new categories being born. That's what Ross said in this quote. And I thought he just kind of perfectly encapsulated it. Watch this. So he, in this article, for those who don't follow him, you absolutely should be following him. In this article he wrote at the beginning of August, he went through and used the analogy of the consolidation we saw in the defense industrial base. So this image here shows you On the left-hand side in the 1980s are all of these companies. And then by 2001, you have one, two, three, four, five. You have five major players in the defense industrial base, right? And he uses that as the example to step through what is a natural market mover and how as you get bigger, you get more entrenched. As you get more entrenched, you have a competitive advantage. It feeds back on itself. And then what you ultimately end up with is something that looks a little bit like this. And he put together this article, and you can see all of these technologies on the left hand side that have landed in Palo Alto, Cloudflare, Zscaler, CrowdStrike. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah,
5, 6, 7, 8,
11.
9, 10, 11. So we're at 11 of these. So we're really close to this. So that's 20 years of consolidation in cybersecurity, now landing at 11 giants. So I'm not going to argue with physics. This seems to be like the motion of the markets, and that's how this works. What I will say, though, as a CISO, one of the things I'm looking for, though, is are they truly integrating? Are they truly creating a
Yes.
platform for me? Or am I just simplifying my SKUs at the buying time? So the question I ask my vendors is when they say, hey, great news, we just bought one, two, three of these companies, you can now have these capabilities. I'm like, cool. Show me your cross product detections that enabled you to achieve something because of this acquisition that you weren't able to do previously. Right. And I think as a security leader, that is something that we can do when we hold these 11 heavyweights to account that says don't just go buy up the market because of you want to go have a new race car because you want to go play in traffic in this new segment. Show me, prove to me that you can buy the technology, acquire the talent, integrate it into me, into the platform that I'm spending all this money with you on, and then my organization gets the benefit of that. Right? I'm not here to keep your stock price high. I'm here to protect my organization.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would go here. I don't think you can fight market forces like this, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you need to fight it. I don't think we'll only ever have 11 security companies because we are in an emerging technology world where the boundaries are always being pushed forward. As they're pushed forward, we create new categories. We have new upstarts who come into that space, and then we have the behemoths who kind of the legacy players who are going to step in and do the acquisition. So I think this is going to be a motion we're going to see forever.
Yes.
But I think as a security leader, you shouldn't just say bigger is better. I want a bigger platform. You should be asking your platform players upon acquisition, are you truly integrating or are you just picking something up because you need to have something to say on your next quarterly earnings report?
Exactly. And we don't want to be held to ransom by the big players, do we?
That's a great segue. Let's use
Great
that word
segue.
ransom. So I was totally blown away by this article, this thing that came out this week. So just want to give a little shout out to Julie Chapman. She wrote about this on LinkedIn. It came on my feed, and that's how it came about it. So we'll link to her in the show notes so you can follow her. It's pretty fantastic. So here's what Stu's talking about. So this week, ESET researchers spotted a new style of ransomware. They've now called it PromptLock. And it's where ransomware isn't just like encrypting the files, but it's bringing its own large language model along for the ride and writing these personalized ransomware
Extortion notes.
notes. And we're starting to see LLMs embedded into the ransomware itself, which and from as I've come to understand from the research from ESET that they've put out, it's not the most sophisticated piece of ransomware on the planet, but for me, this is the beginning of a new style of ransomware that we're going to see. We're
Yeah.
going to see a world where you now have malware that is in the moment, it is offline, it is understanding its environment, it's making localized decisions, and that is taking action. So evasion is going to get better, detection is going to get harder. When you start to fight this thing, it will actually start to fight back in ways that we haven't seen. We've seen polymorphic malware before, but that was always around trying to avoid detection. This is going to be, we're going to have something that's going to be able to see your measures and then deploy countermeasures and start making decisions on its own. I think we're a handful of years away before you get to the science fiction version of that.
Yes.
But this felt like a starting gun for me that we're definitely going down this road.
Yeah. And it's that kind of personalized ransom and LLM driven negotiations and what like having enough intel and working against you because it has enough information on you to know how like you can and might respond is terrifying. Like it throws the playbook out the window, right? And I'd love to get the CISO's thoughts on how much this changes the incident response and like ransom negotiation playbook.
So today, the conversation around AI has largely been in organizations around two areas. One is an organization is deploying AI and so therefore needs to secure the infrastructure that's getting those workloads, right? Lots of dollars are getting invested into this because we have a SaaS product or we have a technology product and we want to have an AI capability in that. And so we need to protect the models. We need to protect our weights. If you're a frontier company, we need to protect this infrastructure, the MCP servers. That's a classic. We have new infrastructure. The security team is going to show up and help us protect either inside the product or inside the business. That's been narrative number one. Narrative number two has been the CISO saying, okay, I want to now rebuild how I operate my organization. And I'm going to rebuild this with getting as much leverage out of AI as I can. We saw that early with with the LLM starting to create everything from policy writing to creating checks when it came to evaluating code. We're now starting to see on the agentic side, we're seeing agentic vulnerability discovery and remediation that's coming up. Now, there's this third thing, what we're talking about here, which hasn't been part of the large stream media conversation, which is the evolution of the threat actors using AI. So we're really in this 1, 2, 3 step for the threat actor. In step one, for the threat actors, adoption of AI has been more of the same, more sophisticated phishing, more effective credential harvesting. The things that we know work, they're just doing it more of it at a lower
Yeah.
cost. Definitely saw that last couple of years. Lots of reports that talk about that. The next one is going to be we're now starting to see threat actors attack the infrastructure of the AI systems. So this is where you have your prompt injection, your data poisoning, all these kind of novel threats for this new set of infrastructure that we didn't have a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That's been part number two. Number three is we're starting to see the threat actors, we're starting to see the first proof of life for the threat actors saying, okay, I want to focus on objectives and outcomes and have the AI, the weaponized malicious
Yeah.
version of this, take care of the decisions in the middle.
Yeah.
And I would argue that this is like a sub point under 3.1. And this
Yeah.
is an example of a threat actor saying, I'm going to focus on outcomes. I'm going to target the company. We'll do the recon. We'll get organized on what we want out of them. But once we get that payload in there, we're letting the weaponized payload make
Yeah.
decisions in real time. And this is where defenders and CISOs get the chance to show up and say, we are actually going to need to rebuild our toolbox to make sure that we're ready so that we have our own blue team, our defensive systems are agentic as well. And they
Yes.
can go back and forth on this. We are going to end up in a world where it's like agents versus agents. We're not there yet. We're walking
Yeah.
before we're running, but that's where we're going. So I would say to CISOs who are looking at this, don't look at the headline or the technical facts. Think about how does this integrate into your strategy for preparing for that third leg as the threat actors adopt AI in a more sophisticated way.
Yeah. And this won't be every threat actor, but this is interesting. This feels more like nation state. This feels more like really tight, world class, like black hat groups, right? Like that's what it feels like.
And that may very well be the case that it started out with a highly sophisticated team with lots of dollars and time. And it
Yeah.
kind of was first shot on goal. They're going to get, it's a little clunky, this, that, and the other. But as we all know, technology proliferates really quickly, right?
Yes.
So whatever starts at the nation state makes its way down to organized crime. And
Yeah.
then from organized crime, you get to individuals, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, look, I think from my end, it's another interesting week. These headlines don't stop coming. Anything else on your mind before we wrap it out?
I think I just want to give the audience a kind of a little call to action here. If you're listening to the show and you like it and you like where we're going with this, please follow us on your favorite podcast app. Please leave us a review. We're really early in this journey and we're trying to create something that it doesn't sound like everybody else. So what Stu and I are actually asking for is roast us in the comments. Say
Yes.
the things out loud that you're too polite to say when you meet us in real person. It's okay. We really need to hear how do we make this time in your ears meaningful for you as a security leader or as a leader who's navigating the security AI space here. So get real on LinkedIn, leave us comments and feedback. We read them, we're responding to them. And then we're also going to have some guests starting to come on this weekly part in addition to our series that we record at Black Hat that we're releasing as well. So if you've got some really exciting research that's coming up and you would like to be featured on the podcast, you are welcome to drop me a note on LinkedIn and we'll have a conversation there.
And if you work for Liquid Death, Connor is still looking for sponsorship.
Yes, I am.
See you
All
next
right,
week,
man.
folks. Thanks for listening.